Okay, fifth grade, so here we are in your SAB for the second half of the test review. This test review will be covering pages 34 through 36, and it's the last part. Question 10 says to draw a line to match the fraction in the left column with its equivalent mixed number in the right column. So for this one, you need to make sure that you're actually doing the work. Fifth grade math is a lot of actually figuring things out and showing your work. And by that I mean I don't want to see you guessing. I don't want you to say, oh, 11/4 is about the same as, and matching these up. Each time you need to set up your division. And this was an expectation that we began last year in fourth grade, so you should be very used to setting things up. Don't be afraid of your pencil. Your pencil is your friend, making sure that you are doing the work. Okay, so 4 goes into 11 2 times. 4 times 2 is 8. 11 minus 8 is 3. And then that 3, that remainder, becomes our numerator, and the denominator stays the same. So we've got 2 and 3/4 there. Aha! There it is. So I did 11/4, changed it to a mixed number, and got 2 and 3/4. So you should do the same with all of these. And if you come up with one that has a different denominator, you might have to simplify it, but it doesn't look that way. It looks like you'll be fine on those. Okay, the next section, number 11. Choose yes or no to tell whether the fractions are equivalent. So again, you have to prove your answer. You can't just guess on this. So what you need to do is think, is there a magic 1 that I can multiply both 5 and 6 by to get to 20 and 24? 5 times 4 is 20. 6 times 4 is 24. So my magic 1 there would be 4/4. 5/6 times, 4/4, or remember that's equivalent to 1, that's why we call it the magic 1, equals 20/24. So I've proven it. Yes, those are equivalent fractions. So on each of these, I want you to be able to prove it. Sometimes you'll notice that they list the larger fraction first, so you can either think about, can you divide by a magic 1 to get this smaller numbered fraction, or you could just flip it around if you prefer multiplication, and you could just start with the small number and decide if you can multiply it by a magic 1 to get to the larger numbered fraction. Okay, section 12. Here we're adding or subtracting fractions, but we're doing them without the same denominator. So they have uncommon denominators. This is where you're definitely going to need scrap paper. I'm going to require you to use scrap paper so that you can show your work. Let's do an example together. This is what we've really been working on in small groups. So hopefully this looks very familiar to you. Make sure you have your long line there stretched out, ready to go. Multiplied by blank equals blank, remembering that those middle ones are our magic ones, where they look like blank dominoes right now. Okay, and then we can put our circles in because that's where our common denominators are going to go. And now all we have to do is look at 5 and 3, our original 2 denominators that are different from each other. What could they both be changed to? What could we use multiplication to do to change them? Another thing to think about is if you were going to list all the Okay, so I realized that my recording stopped because the iPad was out of space. So you'll notice that this jumped ahead just a bit. I actually got through the whole thing, so I'm going to back up a little bit here. And what I was saying before it stopped recording was that you can list the multiples of each of your numbers, of 5 and 3, until you come to one that is the same, and then you can circle it. So 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 5, 10, 15. I'm circling the multiples of 5 and 3, and then I found out that 15 was my common denominator. And then, of course, I went through and found my magic 1, multiplied to get 6 and 5. 6 plus 5 is 11. It does not need to be simplified, so I'm good to go there. You can finish the rest of them up there for extra review. Okay, so this one I already did, but it wasn't recording, as you can see. And this, I feel like this is a really important one to go over because when you're taking your online assessment, it's probably going to have something like this where you're dragging numbers and symbols. So if you can imagine that this is blank here and you're trying to figure out where to put your squares, the word problem, as you read through it, you'll notice that you have two fractions, Kate's cup of orange juice and her sister's amount of orange juice. And of course, it's asking how much orange juice does she pour all together. So the 3/4 is Kate's number and the 7/8 is her sister's number. And this square out here, which might have looked confusing, is just for your operation. So it's just for your plus sign. And then you're saying 3/4 plus 7/8. But of course, they don't have common denominators. And I was showing how you have to find your common denominator. They didn't leave a place for your magic one, so I just wrote mine in. And we were thinking about how, what do I have to change? Do I have to change one of the fractions or both of the fractions? And it turns out I only had to change one of them on this one because 8 can stay the same, and then I just have to change 4 to 8. So 4 times 2 equals 8, 3 times 2 equals 6. So I have 6/8 plus 7/8 equals 13/8, and then having to change 13/8 to a mixed number. So did my division, remembered that my remainder becomes my numerator, 1 and 5/8 cups. Okay, last page. So again, you'll see that this one is already marked up as well. It has two mixed numbers. Spencer's riding his bike 2 7/10 miles altogether. He rides 1 1/4 miles and stops to take a drink. How much does he have yet to go? And I did show this comparison model because I thought it would be handy to think about this again. Remember these from 4th grade? We don't really use them when we're talking about fractions because they could get confusing. You might start thinking about them as fraction bars, and that's not what this model is for. But it is kind of nice to see, oh yeah, 2 7/10 is my large total, 1 1/4 is my smaller, and I'm looking for that difference. So I had that drawn up there just kind of as a reference. But here is what we're actually doing for sure. We need to subtract because 2 7/10 is our large number, finding that common denominator. And again, I listed the multiples of both 4 and 10 to see what I would come up with to get to something that is the same. So counting by 4s, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24. Counting by 10s, 10, 20, 30. I see that I get to 20 on both of those. So 20 is my common multiple, and it becomes my common denominator. Okay, 10 times 2 equals 20, 7 times 2 equals 14, 4 times 5 equals 20, 1 times 5 equals 5. I remember to bring my whole numbers over, 2 and 1. Don't multiply them by anything, they just stay the same. And then I do my subtraction. 14 minus 5 equals 9, 2 minus 1 equals 1, and then we have our denominator of 20. Okay, finally we have a fraction here, or some mixed number problem that requires some estimating. So it says Ika mixes 6 7/8 pints of grape juice and 4 1/4 pints of grape juice to make punch for a party. She has 9 pints of punch left at the end of the party. Estimate how much punch Ika served at the party. So if we're estimating here, we need to round these. And remember, when we're rounding in fractions, our benchmarks or our choices are 0, 1/2, 1, 1 1/2, 2, 2 1/2, 3, etc. So looking at the 6 7/8, we need to decide, is 6 7/8 closer to 6, closer to 6 1/2, closer to 7? Those are our choices. Those are our benchmarks as we're rounding. And I'm going to say 6 7/8 is very, very close to 7, wouldn't you say? 7/8 is almost a whole, so almost 7. So I'm going to say 7 there. And then we're looking at our next fraction, our next mixed number, 4 1/4. This one could be rounded either way. It could be rounded to 4 or rounded to 4 1/2. I'm going to choose, I think, to go down this time because it'll be just a little bit easier for my math. So I'm going to round 4 1/4 to 4. Now, this is how much she mixes of this and how much she mixes of that. So she has 9 pints at the end. How much did she serve? First of all, we have to figure out how much she made. So 7 plus 4 is going to tell us how much she started with. We can't just go with one of these numbers because remember she puts grape juice and cranberry juice together. So 7 plus 4 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, now she has 9 left at the party. So if she started with 11 and she ends with 9, what do we need to do? We need to subtract 11, 11 minus 9 equals 2. So she has 2 pints left. And remember, we have to say about, and we also have to explain. So give yourself a lot of space at the bottom of this rectangle to explain. You would write something like, she has about 2 pints left, period. I know this because I rounded 6 7/8 to 7, 4 1/4 to 4. Really go into detail on this so that you can practice knowing how to explain how we're rounding mixed numbers. That brings us to the end of the review for Unit 1 test. Thanks, 5th graders.